Ethan Cole's frozen fingers couldn't stop shaking as he pressed them against her neck, searching for a pulse he wasn't sure he'd find. The woman slumped against the depot wall wasn't moving. Blood stained her nurse's uniform, black in the lamplight. Her lips had gone blue. One hand still clutched a leather medical bag, like it was the only thing tethering her to this world. He'd ridden 6 hours through a December blizzard for supplies that never came. Now he was staring at a dying stranger, and the choice that would cost him everything. Before we continue this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Stay with us until the very end to see how their love changed an entire town. And comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The station master had left an hour ago, maybe 2. Time moved different when you were alone in the cold. Ethan stamped his boots against the wooden platform, trying to keep blood flowing. His breath came out in white clouds that disappeared into the December darkness. Silver Creek's rail depot sat at the end of nowhere, a wooden structure that leaked wind through every board. The single oil lamp hanging from the awning flickered like it was fighting for its life. Ethan had come for medical supplies. Morphine for old Henry Cooper's leg. Bandages for the Murphy baby's burn. Whiskey for anyone desperate enough to use it as anesthetic. But the freight car that was supposed to arrive never showed. Just another broken promise in a long line of them. He turned toward his horse. That's when he saw her. A woman. Collapsed against the bench like someone had cut her strings. Ethan's hand went to the rifle on his saddle. Instinct from years of watching his back. But the woman didn't move, didn't even seem to be breathing. He approached slow, boots crunching on frozen ground. Her uniform told him what she was. White dress, starched collar, red cross stitched on the sleeve. A nurse. But the blood told him something was wrong. Dark stains spread across her chest and stomach. Not her blood, he realized. Someone else's. Her skin had gone the color of old snow. Frostbite blackened her fingertips. Ice crystals clung to the dark hair that had come loose from its pins. Ethan crouched beside her, touched her shoulder. Cold. Too cold. She mumbled something. Words he couldn't make out. Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. "Ma'am?" His voice came out rough. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. Just shallow breathing. Barely there. He looked at the medical bag she clutched. Good leather, well maintained. The bag of someone who took their work serious. Ethan's mind ran the calculations every poor man knows by heart. His cabin sat 6 miles away through deadly cold. He had firewood for maybe 10 days if he stretched it. Food for 2 weeks if he ate light. His mare was tired. The temperature was dropping. Taking this woman in would cost him. Supplies, warmth, privacy. Maybe his reputation if folks talked. But leaving her meant certain death. Out here a man's measured by what he does when nobody's watching. His father used to say that. Before the war took him. Before everything went to hell. Ethan pulled off his coat. The only one he owned. Wrapped it around her thin frame. She weighed nothing. Lighter than she should. When had she last eaten? He lifted her careful. Her head lolled against his chest. The medical bag he tied to his saddle with leather straps. "Don't know who you are, stranger," he said to her unhearing ears. "But dying alone ain't right for nobody. You hold on. You hear me? Just hold on." He climbed onto his mare, settled the woman in front of him, kept her steady with one arm while the other held the reins. The station lamp grew smaller as they rode into darkness. Snow began to fall. First light, then heavy. Erasing their tracks. Erasing everything. "God help us both," Ethan muttered. The woman's heart still beat against his arm. Faint. Irregular. But there. For now, that was enough. The cabin door slammed open. Ethan kicked it with his boot. Carried her inside. The single room felt colder than outside. Damp cold that sank into your bones. He laid her on his bed, the only bed, narrow, covered with blankets his wife Mary had sewn 3 winters ago. Don't think about Mary. Not now. Ethan moved fast, built a fire with numb hands, coaxed reluctant flames from damp kindling. The wood caught, held. Heat began to push back the cold. He stripped off her frozen outer clothes. The uniform underneath was damp with melted snow and old blood. He worked clinical, respectful. This was survival, not anything else. Mary's old quilt went over her. His spare blanket. Everything he had. Her breathing stayed shallow, fast. He pressed his hand to her forehead. Burning up, fever, exposure, maybe worse. Ethan heated water on the stove, made thin broth from jerky and melted snow, forced it between her cracked lips 1 spoonful at a time. Most of it ran down her chin, but some went down. Some was better than none. He pulled his chair beside the bed, sat, waited. Outside the wind howled. Inside the fire crackled. The woman's breathing was the only other sound. Ethan closed his eyes, just for a minute, just to rest them. 3 days blurred together. The fever ravaged her. She thrashed, cried out, called names he didn't recognize. Dr. Pemberton. The board. Please, I tried. Ethan kept the fire burning, forced broth down her throat, changed the blankets when she soaked them with sweat, slept sitting up, jerked awake every hour to check she was still breathing. On the 4th morning, her eyes opened. Terror flashed across her face. She bolted upright, looked around wild, at the rough furniture, the leaking roof, the photographs on the mantel. A young woman holding an infant. Where am I? Her voice cracked. Who are you? Ethan backed away, hands raised. Peaceful. You're safe, ma'am. Found you near froze to death at the station, 4 nights back. I'm Ethan Cole. This is my land. She stared at him, breathing hard, deciding whether to trust. Her gaze fell on the medical bag, sitting carefully beside the bed. My bag. You didn't touch nothing inside, Ethan said. Figured it was important. Some of the fear left her face. Her shoulders dropped. She slumped back against the thin pillow. Thank you, she whispered. I'm Grace Winters. Ethan nodded. Miss Winters. Just Grace. He moved to the fireplace, added another log. You were bad off. Frostbite on your fingers. Fever for 3 days straight. You're lucky to be breathing. Grace looked down at her hands. Torn cloth wrapped around the worst of it. Not professional bandaging, but functional. She saw the photograph again. The woman and baby. Both smiling. The frame covered in dust. Your family. Was. The single word carried 3 years of grief. Grace understood without asking. Loss recognized loss. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Ethan turned from the fire. No need, but I got to be straight with you. I got food for maybe 12 days if we're careful. Firewood for 10. Winter don't care about our plans. And I can't get to town till the road's clear. Grace sat up slow, ignoring the protest of her aching body. She looked at this man who'd saved her life. Worn clothes, calloused hands, eyes that had seen too much sorrow. Then I won't be a burden long, she said. I'm a nurse, a real one. I can earn my keep. Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Not quite hope, but close to it. Can you ride? If I have to. Town's 6 miles. Roads are bad, but passable now. You can stay till you're strong enough. Then I'll take you to Silver Creek, help you get settled wherever you're headed. Grace looked out the window, saw the simple wooden cross in the near distance. Snow covered the grave, but love had placed it there. I'm not headed anywhere, she said softly. There's nowhere left to go. Ethan watched her, running from something, from everything. He didn't push, just nodded. All right, you rest today. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step. But Grace was already standing. Weak, unsteady, but standing. Show me what you have for medical supplies. If I'm staying even temporarily, I should know what I'm working with. Ethan opened a cabinet, showed her what little he had. Whiskey, some old bandages, a rusty knife he'd tried to sterilize. Grace's professional mask slipped. Horror flickered across her face. This is what you've been using. It's what I can afford. She closed her eyes, took a breath. All right, we'll work with it. Boil water, lots of it. And I need clean cloth. Anything you can spare. For what? Your shoulder. I watched you move. Old break. Healed wrong. I can fix it. If you'll let me. Ethan's hand went automatically to his left shoulder. The one that hadn't worked right since Shiloh. Since the horse threw him and no one had money for a real doctor. It's fine. It's not. And if you're going to help me, I'm going to help you. That's how this works. For the first time in 3 years, something like a smile touched Ethan's face. Yes, ma'am. Grace, she corrected. Grace. That afternoon, Martha Cooper arrived. Ethan heard the wagon before he saw it. He stepped onto the porch. Grace stayed inside, out of sight. Martha climbed down slow. She was maybe 60, sturdy, gray hair pulled back severe, eyes that missed nothing. Ethan Cole, she said. No greeting, just statement. Martha. Heard you brought someone home from the station. News traveled fast, even out here. Found a woman near froze, couldn't leave her. Martha studied him. She's still here? Recovering. Respectable. She's a nurse. Martha's expression didn't change. That ain't what I asked. Grace appeared in the doorway, wrapped in Mary's old shawl, chin up, meeting Martha's gaze direct. I'm Grace Winters. I'm a trained nurse from Philadelphia. Mr. Cole saved my life. I'm staying until I'm strong enough to leave. And I'll work to earn my keep while I'm here. Martha looked her up and down, like she was evaluating livestock. Philadelphia? That's a long way. Yes, ma'am. And you came west because... Grace's jaw tightened. Because I had to. Martha waited. Grace didn't elaborate. Finally, Martha nodded. All right, but you should know town won't like this. Ethan's a widower. You're unmarried. Folks will talk. Let them, Grace said. Martha almost smiled. You got spine. I'll give you that. She turned to Ethan. Silas Vaughn's been looking for reasons to get your land. Don't give him any. I know. Martha climbed back onto her wagon, but before leaving, she tossed a wrapped bundle to Ethan. He caught it. Preserves, Martha said. And some decent bandages. Girl looks like she needs real food. She snapped the reins. The wagon rolled away. Grace watched her go. Who's Silas Vaughn? The man who owns everything I don't. Why does he want your land? Ethan looked out at the horizon. At the valley that stretched for miles. Good grazing land. Water access. The kind of land men killed for. Railroads coming. My property sits right in the path. He wants to buy cheap. I won't sell. Grace absorbed this. And having me here gives him ammunition. Maybe. Then I should go. Not till you're healed. Ethan. Not till you're healed, he repeated. Firm. Final. Grace stared at him. This man who'd given up his coat, his food, his bed. Who was risking his land because leaving her to die wasn't something he could live with. Why? She asked quietly. Why help me when it cost you so much? Ethan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. 3 winters back, my wife went into labor early. I was 2 days away buying breeding stock, trying to build something for us, for our son. He stopped, swallowed. By the time I got back, they were both gone. Sarah and Caleb. Midwife said the baby was breech. Said there was nothing anyone could have done. But I wasn't there. I chose wrong. Chose building something over being home. Grace's eyes filled with tears. You couldn't have known. That's what everyone says. Don't make it easier to sleep. He looked at her. I wasn't there when my family needed me. Maybe helping you is just trying to balance the scales. Maybe it's selfish. I don't know. But I couldn't leave you to die. Grace wiped her eyes. It's not selfish. It's human. Is that what you ran from, something human? She tensed. I ran from people who couldn't see the difference between doing right and doing what's expected. Want to talk about it? Not yet. All right. They stood in the cold. Two broken people, both carrying guilt that wasn't entirely theirs, both trying to survive. I can fix your shoulder, Grace said finally. It'll hurt, but I can fix it. Ethan nodded. Then let's get started. The next 2 weeks fell into rhythm. Every morning, Grace worked on Ethan's shoulder. She was right. It hurt. He gritted his teeth through the manipulation, the careful, precise pressure she applied to coax the joint back into proper alignment. You were a soldier, she said one morning. Not a question. Union, Battle of Shiloh. Horse threw me during retreat. Field surgeon said he'd have to amputate if infection set in. I told him no. Healed on its own, mostly. Who told you that was healing? Despite the pain, Ethan smiled. Fair point. Grace worked in silence for a while. Her hands were steady, confident. This was someone who knew what they were doing. You're good at this, Ethan said. I had good teachers, and a lot of practice. What happened in Philadelphia? Her hands stilled. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. There was a doctor, Dr. Marcus Pemberton, chief of surgery at Pennsylvania Hospital for Women. She resumed working. Her voice went flat. Clinical. He performed unnecessary procedures, hysterectomies on immigrant women, poor women who couldn't fight back, who didn't speak English well enough to understand what he was doing. Ethan went very still. Jesus. I reported him. Testified at the medical board hearing. Brought evidence. And he had connections, wealthy friends. The board dismissed my claims. Said I was hysterical, emotional, that women were too fragile for the difficult realities of medicine. Her hands pressed harder than necessary. Ethan winced but didn't complain. They destroyed my career. Made sure no hospital in the city would hire me. Pemberton himself told me I'd never work as a nurse again. Not anywhere that mattered. So you came west. So I came west. Because there was nowhere else. She stepped back. That's enough for today. Move your arm. Slow. Ethan rotated his shoulder. The motion was smoother. Easier. Less pain. Better, he admitted. It'll keep getting better. Another week and you'll have full range back. She started to leave. Ethan's voice stopped her. You did the right thing. Reporting him. Grace's shoulders tightened. The right thing cost me everything. Doesn't make it less right. She turned, looked at him. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of it? Something cracked in Grace's expression. The wall she'd built. Just a hairline fracture. But there. Thank you, she whispered. She left before he could respond. Word spread slow, but it spread. A woman rode up one morning, young, maybe 20, holding a child who couldn't breathe right, gasping, skin going blue around the lips. Please, the woman begged. Martha Cooper said there's a nurse here. My son, he can't breathe. Grace didn't hesitate. Inside, now. She worked fast. Steam tent, herbal poultices Martha had left. Kept the boy upright. Talked to him calm while his mother cried. You're going to be fine, Grace told the child. Just breathe with me. In. Out. That's it. 4 hours later, the crisis passed. The boy's breathing eased. Color returned to his face. His mother sobbed with relief. "How much do I owe you?" Grace looked at Ethan. He shook his head slightly. "Nothing," Grace said. "Just promise me you'll come back if he gets worse." The woman left a basket of eggs. "It's all I have." "It's plenty." After she left, Ethan found Grace sitting on the porch, staring at her hands. "You all right?" "I just realized something. In Philadelphia, I couldn't help anyone. Too many rules, too much politics. But here," she looked up at him, "here I can actually do what I was trained to do." "Then stay." The words hung in the cold air. Grace met his eyes. "You don't mean that." "I do. Stay. We'll figure it out. I'll build you a proper examination area. You treat folks who need it. We split whatever they can pay." "Ethan, the town?" "To hell with the town. They'll come around or they won't. But people need help. You can give it. That's what matters." Grace studied him. This man who'd given her shelter, who believed in doing right even when it cost him, who looked at her like she was worth something. "All right," she said quietly. "I'll stay. For now." Ethan nodded, tried to ignore the way his chest loosened, like he'd been holding his breath and finally let it out. Good. He went to the barn, started sorting lumber for the examination area he'd promised to build. Grace watched him go, wrapped Mary's shawl tighter around her shoulders. She was staying. God help them both. More came after that. A rancher with an infected wound, an elderly woman with pneumonia, a child who'd burned their hand on a stove. Grace treated them all, accepted what they could pay: flour, preserved vegetables, a repaired saddle, fresh milk. She never turned anyone away. Ethan built her examination area in the corner, simple but functional. Clean surface, shelves for supplies, a curtain for privacy. They worked side by side. Grace teaching Ethan basic medicine. Ethan teaching Grace frontier survival, how to split wood, how to read weather, how to make supplies stretch. They developed rhythms, patterns, the comfortable silence of people learning to coexist. One evening after treating a difficult case, they sat by the fire, both exhausted. "Tell me about Mary," Grace said quietly. Ethan stiffened. "Why?" "Because she's still here. In this house. In you. And if I'm going to stay, I should know who she was." He was silent so long Grace thought he wouldn't answer. "She was good," he finally said. "Better than I deserved." She laughed easy, sang while she cooked. She wanted a big family. Lots of kids. A house full of noise and life. His voice caught. "I couldn't give her that. I couldn't even keep her alive." Grace reached across the space between them, took his hand. "It wasn't your fault." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Breech birth. No doctor. Miles from help. There was nothing you could have done differently. I could have been there." "And then what?" "Watch them die." "Ethan, you're not God. You can't control everything." He looked at her. Really looked. "Is that what you tell yourself about Pemberton?" She flinched. "That's different." "Is it?" "You did everything right, reported him, testified, fought the system, and it destroyed you anyway. Was that your fault?" "No, but nothing. We both did what we thought was right. We both paid for it. That doesn't make us responsible for other people's choices." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Then why does it still hurt so much?" "Because we're human. Because we care. And that's not a weakness. It's the only thing that makes any of this worth surviving." She leaned against his shoulder. He didn't pull away. They sat like that until the fire burned low. Two broken people. Learning that maybe broken pieces could fit together, could make something new. Outside, the first star appeared. Inside, something was beginning. Something neither quite understood yet, but both could feel. Pedis. Christmas Eve arrived quiet and cold. Grace had been with Ethan for 6 weeks. The examination area saw steady use. Her reputation spread. Even people who whispered about propriety came when they were desperate. That evening, Ethan disappeared into the barn, returned with a small wrapped bundle. "These were Sarah's," he said, handing it to Grace. Inside were leather gloves. Fine quality, lovingly maintained. "Ethan, I can't." "You can, you should. She'd want them used, not locked away gathering dust." Grace tried them on. Perfect fit. Her eyes filled with tears, the first she'd allowed since Boston. "This is too much." "It ain't enough. You've done more good in 6 weeks than I've managed in 3 years. You saved that Murphy baby, Jesse Cooper's leg, old Anna Pritchard's pneumonia. You're healing this whole valley." "I'm just doing what I was trained to do." "No, you're doing what you were meant to do. There's a difference." Grace looked at him across the firelight. This good man who'd saved her life and asked nothing in return. "You gave me back my life," she said softly. "My purpose. My—" She stopped, couldn't say the word. "Your what?" "My hope." Ethan stood, moved closer. "Grace, don't. Please. If you say what I think you're going to say, everything changes, and I'm not ready for everything to change." "All right. But you should know. You're not alone here. Not anymore." He went to the barn to sleep, maintaining propriety. But he lay awake in the hay, watching lamplight glow from the cabin window. Inside, Grace stood at that window, looking toward the barn, one hand pressed against the cold glass. She was falling in love with him. Had been for weeks. Maybe since the moment she woke up and he'd said, "You're safe." But love was complicated. Love was dangerous. Love could destroy what they'd built. So she said nothing, did nothing. Just stood at the window and watched the barn and let herself feel it without acting on it. For now, that would have to be enough. The blizzard hit 2 days after Christmas. Sudden, vicious. Wind that screamed like something alive. Snow that turned day to night in minutes. For 4 days they were trapped. Snow piled against the door waist-high by the first morning. Ethan had to shoulder it open just to see how bad things were, white everywhere. Sky and ground merged into one endless wall of blinding nothing. He pulled the door shut, looked at Grace standing by the fire. Her face told him she understood. "We're trapped," she said. "For a while." "Yeah." 4 days minimum, maybe more depending on when the wind died. They had firewood, had food if they stretched it, had each other. That last part was the complicated bit. The first day passed in practical tasks, rationing food, keeping the fire fed, melting snow for water. They worked together efficiently, speaking only what was necessary. The cabin felt smaller somehow, like the walls had moved closer. Grace organized medical supplies. Ethan repaired a broken chair leg. Normal things. Safe things. But the silence between words grew heavier, filled with things neither would say. That night, they ate thin stew by firelight. Ethan watched Grace across the table, the way the flames caught gold in her dark hair, the way her fingers moved precise and careful, even doing something as simple as holding a spoon. "What?" she asked without looking up. "Nothing." "You're staring." "Sorry." She met his eyes then. Something passed between them. Quick. Electric. Gone before either could name it. Grace stood, cleared the dishes. Ethan went to check the fire. They went to their separate corners. Grace to the bed, Ethan to his chair. The same arrangement they'd kept for weeks. But tonight, the distance felt wrong. Forced. Like they were both pretending something that had stopped being true. Morning came gray and howling. The second day of the blizzard. Grace woke to find Ethan already up, whittling something by the fire. Wood shavings fell into the flames, caught, burned. "What are you making?" she asked. He held it up. A small horse, crude but recognizable. "Caleb never got any toys. I used to think about what I'd make him, when he was older." Grace sat beside him on the floor, close enough their shoulders almost touched. "Tell me about him. About both of them." Ethan's hands stilled on the wood. Sarah had this way of humming while she worked. Old hymns mostly. She didn't have much of a voice, but she didn't care. Said God didn't judge folks on pitch. A ghost of a smile touched his face. "And Caleb. I only got to hold him once. After. He was so small. Fit in my two hands. He had Sarah's nose. I remember thinking how unfair it was. That he looked so perfect, so ready for life, and he'd never get to live it." His voice cracked. Grace took his hand, held it. "When I buried them, I promised I'd make something of this place. Make it worthy of their memory. But all I've done is survive, barely." "That's not nothing," Grace said quietly. "Surviving when everything in you wants to quit. That takes more strength than people know." Ethan looked at her. "Is that what you're doing?" "Surviving. I'm trying to. Trying's enough." They sat in silence. The wind screamed outside. Inside, the fire crackled. Grace's hand stayed in his. "I need to tell you something," she said finally. "About Philadelphia. About why I really left." "You already told me. The doctor. The board. That's not all of it." Ethan waited. Patient. The way he always was with her. Grace took a breath. "The morning of the hearing, Dr. Pemberton came to my apartment. He offered me money. A substantial amount. Enough to live comfortably for years. All I had to do was withdraw my testimony. You said no. I said no. And he told me I was throwing my life away for nothing. That those women I was trying to protect, they didn't matter. That in the grand scheme of things, removing their ability to have children was a kindness. Less mouths to feed. Less poverty to perpetuate." Her voice shook with old anger. He actually believed it. Believed he was doing God's work, cleaning up society's mistakes. "What did you do?" "I went to the hearing. I testified. I showed the board records I'd copied. Proof of unnecessary procedures. Of women who'd died from complications. Of families destroyed." She laughed bitterly. "And you know what the board chair said? He said I clearly didn't understand the complexities of medical decision-making. That my feminine sensibilities were clouding my judgment. That perhaps nursing wasn't the right profession for someone so emotionally unstable." Ethan's jaw tightened. Bastards. 3 days later, I was dismissed from the hospital. By the end of the week, every medical facility in Philadelphia had blacklisted me. Pemberton made sure of it. And the women I tried to help, most of them were too afraid to speak up. Too afraid of deportation or losing what little they had. Grace wiped her eyes roughly. "So I ran, got on a train west, didn't even know where I was going, just away. As far away as I could get from the people who valued reputation over lives." She looked at Ethan. "That's who you saved at the station. A coward who ran instead of fighting. That ain't cowardice. That's survival." "Is there a difference?" "Yeah. Cowards hurt people to save themselves. You got hurt trying to save others. There's a world of difference in that." Grace's face crumpled. The tears she'd been holding for months finally broke free. Ethan pulled her close. Let her cry against his chest. Didn't tell her to stop or that everything would be fine. Just held her while the storm raged outside and inside both. When the tears finally stopped, Grace stayed where she was, listening to his heartbeat. Steady. Reliable. Real. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" For not telling me I should have done something different. Everyone else did. Even the ones who said they supported me. You did what was right. That's all anyone can do. She pulled back, looked up at him. Their faces were close. Too close. She could see the gray flecks in his blue eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his breath caught when he looked at her. Ethan, I know we shouldn't. I know all the reasons why this is complicated. Then why does it feel so simple? He touched her face, gentle. His calloused thumb brushed her cheek. Because maybe it is. Maybe we're the ones making it complicated. If we do this, everything changes. Maybe everything should change. Grace closed the distance, kissed him. Tentative at first, testing. He kissed her back. Careful. Like she was something precious that might break. When they separated, both were breathing unsteadily. That was, Grace started. Yeah. We probably shouldn't. Probably not. They kissed again, less tentative this time, more certain. 3 years of loneliness and grief and fear poured into that kiss, finding something that felt like hope on the other side. When they finally stopped, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. Tell me this ain't just the storm. Tell me when the snow clears, you won't regret this. I don't know what happens when the storm clears, but I know I don't regret this. I couldn't if I tried. Grace, I ain't got much to offer. This cabin, this land, it's not enough for... She kissed him quiet. It's enough. You're enough. They stayed like that, holding each other while the blizzard screamed. Two people who'd lost everything, finding something worth keeping. The third day, the storm showed no signs of stopping. They were running low on firewood. Ethan braved the wind to bring more from the barn, came back half frozen. Grace made him strip the wet clothes, wrapped him in blankets by the fire. You're an idiot, she said, but her hands were gentle as she checked him for frostbite. Needed doing. You could have waited. And freeze tonight. No thanks. She worked in silence for a minute. Then, teach me something. What? Anything. Some skill you have. I want to know. Ethan thought about it. Can you dance? Grace blinked. That's what you want to teach me? Dancing? Sarah and I used to dance. In here. No music. Just me humming whatever tune came to mind. It helped. When things got hard. Made us remember there was more to life than just surviving. Grace's expression softened. All right. Teach me. He stood, still wrapped in the blanket, started humming. An old tune. Something his mother used to sing. Grace rose, took his outstretched hand. They moved clumsily in the small space. Grace stepped on his foot twice. They bumped into the table, the chair. Both started laughing. This is terrible, Grace said. Worst dancing I've ever seen. You're supposed to be teaching me. I'm trying. You're just a terrible student. She swatted his arm. He spun her. She stumbled. He caught her. Suddenly they were close again. The laughter faded. His hands on her waist, hers on his shoulders. They swayed, slower now. His humming quieter, more intimate. Ethan. Yeah. I'm scared. Of what? Of this. Of caring this much. Of losing it. He pulled her closer. I'm scared too. But I'm more scared of not trying. Of letting fear make me miss something real. Grace rested her head against his chest. They swayed in the firelight. No music now. Just breathing. Just being. If we do this, she whispered. If we really do this, people will talk. Vaughn will use it against you. You could lose everything. I already lost everything once, and I survived. But Grace, if I lose you now, after finding you, that might actually break me. She looked up at him. Then don't lose me. I ain't planning to. They kissed again, deeper this time. Ethan picked her up, carried her to the bed. They made love slow and careful, learning each other, two people who'd forgotten what tenderness felt like remembering together. Afterward, they lay tangled in blankets. Grace traced the scars on his chest, bullet wound, knife wound, the marks of a hard life. "Tell me about the war," she said. "Not much to tell. I was young, stupid. Thought I'd be a hero. Came home broken instead." "Were you afraid?" "Every damn day. But you don't think about fear when people are depending on you. You just do what needs doing and pray you live long enough to regret it later." Grace kissed his shoulder. "I think you're braver than you know," says the woman who stood up to the entire Philadelphia medical establishment. "And lost. You didn't lose. You just didn't win the way you wanted. There's a difference." She propped herself up on one elbow, looked at him serious. "What are we going to do when the storm ends, when we have to face the town?" Ethan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "We face it together. Martha's on our side. Dr. Hayes spoke well of you. Some others will come around. The rest?" He shrugged. "To hell with them. Vaughn won't let this go. Let him try. I ain't giving you up. Not for him. Not for anybody. Even if it cost you this land. Even then. Land can be bought again eventually. But you, there ain't another you. And I'll be damned if I let fear or propriety or Vaughn's greed take away the first good thing that's happened to me in 3 years." Grace's eyes filled with tears. Happy ones this time. "How did I get so lucky freezing to death at a train station?" "Reckon we both got lucky." They held each other as the storm continued outside. For the first time since losing Sarah, Ethan felt something besides grief. Something that felt dangerously close to joy. The 4th day, the wind finally died. The snow stopped. Weak sunlight filtered through gaps in the clouds. They spent the morning digging out, creating a path to the barn, to the well. Back to something like normal. Except nothing was normal anymore. Everything had changed. That afternoon, Grace was organizing supplies when Ethan came inside. His face was grim. "What's wrong?" "Rider coming, from town." Her stomach dropped. "Vaughn?" "Don't know yet, but whoever it is, they're moving fast." They waited on the porch. Grace stood close to Ethan. His hand found hers, held tight. The rider came into view. Not Vaughn. Martha Cooper, pushing her horse hard through the snow. She pulled up, didn't dismount. Her face was grave. "It started," she said without preamble. "Vaughn gave a speech at church yesterday. Called what you two are doing immoral. Said Ethan's harboring an unmarried woman improperly. He's demanding Grace leave within 7 days or he'll foreclose on the property." Ethan's hand tightened on Grace's. "He can't. I don't owe him enough." "He says you will. He's calling in credit all over the valley, making it so you can't buy supplies. Can't get seed for spring planting. Says you'll be bankrupt inside a month and then he'll take the land legal." "Why?" Grace demanded. "Why does he care so much about this particular piece of land?" Martha's expression was sad. "Because 10 years ago his wife died in childbirth. The midwife couldn't save her, and Vaughn's hated any woman practicing medicine ever since. He sees you as a threat, a reminder. Maybe both." Grace felt sick. His grief doesn't give him the right to destroy lives. No, but it explains him. And out here understanding your enemy is half the battle. Ethan's jaw was set, determined. "What do we do?" Martha looked between them, at their clasped hands, at the way they stood together, united. "You fight, but you do it smart. Dr. Hayes is on your side. Some of the families you've treated will speak for you. Henry and I will put up what we can financially. But Grace, you need to understand. This is going to get ugly. Vaughn won't stop until he's destroyed you both or gotten what he wants." Grace lifted her chin. "Then let him try. I ran once. From Philadelphia. I'm done running. Even if it cost you everything. I don't have everything. Just this. Just him. and I'll fight for that with everything I have left." Martha almost smiled. "Good. Because Henry's organizing folks tonight, at our place. Strategy meeting. Both of you should come." "We'll be there," Ethan said. Martha nodded, started to turn her horse, then stopped. "Ethan, for what it's worth, I think Sarah would approve. She always said you had too much love in you to keep it locked away forever." She rode off before he could respond. Grace looked up at Ethan. His eyes were wet. "You all right?" Yeah, I think I am." That night they rode to the Coopers. Grace behind Ethan on the horse, her arms around his waist. The valley stretched white and pristine under a clear sky, stars emerging, beautiful and indifferent to human struggle. The Cooper house glowed with lamplight, warmth spilling from windows. 6 wagons sat outside, more than Grace expected. Inside, 20 people crowded the main room. Ranchers, farmers, their wives. Some Grace recognized, patients she'd treated. Others were strangers. They all turned when Ethan and Grace entered. For a moment, silence. Grace felt every eye on her. Judging, weighing, deciding. Then Jesse Cooper stepped forward. 13 years old, still limping slightly, but walking on the leg Grace saved. "Miss Winters taught me reading while she fixed my leg," Jesse said to the room. "She didn't have to, but she did, because she said learning was medicine too, for the soul." He looked at Grace. "You saved my leg, my life probably, and I'll stand with you, against Vaughn, against anybody." A murmur ran through the crowd. Then Sarah Murphy stood. Murphy, the young mother whose baby Grace delivered. "My daughter would have died. Doc Hayes was too sick to come. It was midnight, middle of a storm. Grace came anyway, stayed 12 hours, never asked for payment, just held my hand and told me I was strong enough." She looked around the room. "That's the woman Vaughn's trying to destroy, and I won't stand for it." One by one they stood, spoke, shared stories. The rancher whose infection Grace treated. The widow whose husband Grace sat with during his final hours. The child whose burn healed clean because of Grace's careful care. Martha stood last. "I was a battlefield nurse at Shiloh. I've worked with dozens of doctors and nurses. Grace Winters is as good as any I've met, better than most. What she and Ethan choose to do under their own roof is their business, not Vaughn's, not ours. But what we choose to do about Vaughn's bullying, that's our business." Henry Cooper cleared his throat. "I've got $3,000 in Vaughn's bank. I'm withdrawing it, all of it. And I'll loan Ethan whatever he needs to stay solvent till spring." "I've got 700, another rancher said. "I'll pull it too." "I can spare 200. 500 here." The pledges kept coming. Grace's eyes filled with tears. These people, most of them strangers 3 months ago, standing up, speaking out, risking Vaughn's wrath, for her, for Ethan, for the principle of the thing. Ethan's hand found hers again, squeezed. She squeezed back. Martha laid out the plan. They'd meet Vaughn publicly, in 7 days, town square. Let him make his case. Then they'd make theirs, show the community who'd actually been helping people, who'd been hoarding power. "It's risky," Martha warned. "Vaughn's got the mayor in his pocket, the sheriff, most of the merchants. We're outnumbered." "But we're right," Grace said quietly. "That has to count for something. In a just world, yeah, but Silver Creek ain't always just. It's just what we make it." They spent 2 hours planning who would speak, what they'd say, how to counter Vaughn's arguments. Riding home, Grace leaned against Ethan's back, exhausted, scared, but something else too. Hopeful. Maybe. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not making me face this alone." "Grace, you couldn't be alone now if you tried. You got a whole community behind you." "We got a community behind us." "Yeah, we do." Back at the cabin, they lay in bed, both too keyed up to sleep. "What if we lose?" Grace whispered. What if Vaughn wins, and you lose everything? Ethan rolled to face her, took her face in his hands. Then we start over. Somewhere else. Together. I've lost land before. I'll survive losing it again. But Grace, I won't survive losing you. So, if it comes down to choosing between this place and you, I choose you, every time. She kissed him. Hard. Desperate. Grateful. I love you, she said. The first time either had spoken the words. I love you too. Have since you woke up and checked your medical bag before anything else. Knew then you were someone worth fighting for. 7 days, Grace said. 7 days, Ethan agreed. They held each other in the darkness. 7 days until they faced Vaughn. Until the town decided their fate. 7 days to prepare for the fight of their lives. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, cold and distant. Inside, two people who'd found each other against all odds faced the future together. Whatever came next, they'd face it standing. They'd face it together. And that would have to be enough. The 7 days passed like water through cupped hands. Too fast. Not fast enough. Grace threw herself into work. Treated everyone who came. A farmer's wife with infected stitches from a kitchen accident. Twin boys with matching fevers. An elderly man whose arthritis had him crying from pain. She worked sunrise to sunset, keeping her hands busy so her mind couldn't spiral into fear. Ethan worked beside her, built extra shelving for supplies. Repaired the leaking roof finally. Chopped enough firewood to last through February. Staying busy, staying useful. Not thinking about what happened in 7 days when they'd stand in front of the whole town and let strangers decide their fate. On the third night, Martha arrived with Dr. Abigail Hayes. Grace had heard about Dr. Hayes, the legendary woman physician who'd come west 30 years ago, who'd fought her own battles. Won some, lost others. Still practiced despite failing eyesight and the town's constant low-grade disapproval. Dr. Hayes was maybe 65, compact, steel gray hair pulled back severe, eyes that missed nothing even if they couldn't see everything anymore. She walked into the cabin, looked around. Her gaze landed on Grace's examination area, the organized supplies, the careful sterile technique, the patient records Grace kept in neat handwriting. Martha says you're competent, Dr. Hayes said without preamble. Show me. Grace blinked. Ma'am. Show me you're not some charlatan pretending at medicine. I won't defend incompetence, even against Silas Vaughn. Martha looked apologetic. Abigail's direct, but fair. Grace straightened her spine, met Dr. Hayes's challenging gaze. What do you want to see? Everything. How you assess, how you treat, your knowledge base, your judgment calls. For the next 2 hours, Dr. Hayes threw scenarios at Grace. A child presenting with fever and stiff neck. An elderly patient with chest pain. A pregnant woman bleeding in her second trimester. Grace answered each one, explained her reasoning, her treatment plans, when she'd know to call for a doctor versus handle it herself. Dr. Hayes listened, asked sharp questions, challenged assumptions, pushed harder than any of Grace's instructors in Philadelphia ever had. Finally, she sat back. Where did you train? Pennsylvania Hospital for Women, under Dr. Catherine Morrison. Morrison's good, rigorous. You learned well. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment, just an observation. But something like approval flickered in Dr. Hayes's expression. Martha says you reported a physician for misconduct. Marcus Pemberton. Grace tensed. You know him. I know of him. Man's a butcher with a medical license. Been getting away with it for years because he's charming and well-connected. You testified against him. Yes, ma'am. And they destroyed you for it. Yes, ma'am. Dr. Hayes nodded slowly. Same thing happened to me. Different doctor. Different city. 32 years ago. I reported him for drinking during surgeries, for operating when he was too impaired to hold a scalpel steady. They called me hysterical, said I was jealous of his success, ran me out of Boston. She looked at Grace, really looked. So I came west. Figured out here competence might matter more than gender. I was half right. It's been a long 30 years. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand something. What we're fighting isn't new. It's old as medicine itself. Men like Vaughn, like Pemberton, like the doctor who destroyed me, they're not anomalies. They're the system. And the system protects its own. Then why fight? If we can't win. Dr. Hayes smiled, thin, hard. Because sometimes losing with dignity is worth more than winning by staying silent. And sometimes if you fight long enough, you don't lose. You just don't win the way you expected. She stood, handed Grace a leather bag. Inside were medical texts, at least 20 books, worn, annotated in the margins. My library, Dr. Hayes said. I won't need them much longer. My eyes are failing, but you will. Study them, learn them, become better than good, become undeniable. Grace's hands trembled holding the bag. I can't accept this. You can and you will. Consider it an investment in the future of women in medicine, a future I won't live to see, but you might. Dr. Hayes. Abigail. And don't thank me. Just don't waste them. She moved to the door, paused. At the town meeting I'll speak for you, but Grace, understand this. We might lose. Probably will. Vaughn's got money and power and the weight of tradition behind him. We've got conviction and not much else. It's enough, Grace said. It has to be. Abigail studied her. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? Something shifted in Abigail's expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. You'll do. You'll do just fine. After she left, Grace sat with the medical books. Ran her fingers over the worn covers. These represented 3 decades of Abigail's work, her battles, her survival. Ethan sat beside her. Heavy. Yes, but not because of the weight. She believes in you. She believes in what I represent. That's different. Is it? Grace looked at him. What if we lose? What if I cost you everything, and we still lose? Ethan took her hand. Then we lose, but we lose standing up. And Grace, I'd rather lose everything fighting beside you than keep everything by standing alone. I don't deserve you. Pretty sure I don't deserve you either. So we're even. She kissed him, soft, grateful, scared. 3 more days. 3 more days. The night before the town meeting, Grace couldn't sleep. She lay in bed watching shadows dance on the ceiling. Ethan's breathing steady beside her. How had he become so essential so fast? 3 months ago, she didn't know he existed. Now the thought of losing him felt like losing a limb. She slipped out of bed, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, stood at the window looking out at the valley. The door opened behind her. Ethan. Of course. Can't sleep, he asked. Keep thinking about tomorrow, about what Vaughn might say, how people might react. Worrying won't change it. I know. Doesn't stop me from doing it. He stood behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned back against his chest. Tell me something true, she said. Something that's not about tomorrow or Vaughn or any of this mess. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, when Sarah died, I thought I died too. Not my body, but everything that mattered. I went through motions, fed the horse, chopped wood, ate when I remembered. But I wasn't living, just existing. His arms tightened around her. Then I found you half frozen at that station, and I was angry. Angry that the universe was putting another responsibility on me, another person to fail, another chance to lose someone. Ethan, let me finish. I was angry, but I couldn't leave you. And then you woke up, And you were fierce. Even half dead from exposure, you were checking your medical bag, making sure your tools were safe. And I thought, this woman's a fighter. He turned her to face him. You brought me back to life, Grace. Not just alive, actually living, feeling things, wanting things, believing things could be better. So whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that. You saved me just as much as I saved you. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I love you. I love you too. They stood holding each other while the stars wheeled overhead and the future waited just beyond the horizon. Morning came too fast. They dressed carefully. Grace in her nurse's uniform. Clean, professional. Ethan in his only good shirt, the one Mary had sewn. Both of them armor-clad in their own ways. Martha arrived with her wagon, Henry beside her, Jesse in the back. Boy insisted on coming, Martha said. Couldn't talk him out of it. Jesse climbed down, stood straight despite his limp. I'm testifying. Miss Winters saved my leg. People should know. Grace's throat tightened. Jesse, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You taught me reading. Taught me that what's right matters more than what's easy. Time I practice what you preached. Ethan gripped the boy's shoulder. You're a good man, Jesse Cooper. Trying to be, sir. The ride to Silver Creek felt eternal and instant. Grace's stomach churned. Beside her, Ethan sat solid, steady. His hand found hers, held tight. The town square was packed. Someone had set up a platform in the center. Makeshift, just boards laid across barrels. But it served. Made this official. Made it theater. Vaughn stood on the platform already, waiting. He wore a fine suit. Dark, expensive. His face was composed, confident. A man used to winning. Grace's hands started shaking. Ethan squeezed her fingers. Breathe, he said quiet. Just breathe. Martha led them through the crowd. Faces turned. Some friendly, most curious. A few openly hostile. Grace kept her chin up, kept walking. They reached the platform. Vaughn's eyes fixed on Grace. Cold, assessing. Like she was a problem to be solved. An equation to balance. Miss Winters, he said. Polite. Dangerous. Mr. Cole, thank you for joining us. Didn't seem like we had much choice, Ethan said flat. We always have choices. That's what today is about. The mayor stepped forward, a nervous man, sweating despite the cold. Folks, thank you for coming. We're here to address concerns raised by Mr. Vaughn regarding certain living arrangements that may not meet community standards. Don't dance around it, Mitchell, Vaughn said. I'll speak plainly. Ethan Cole is harboring an unmarried woman in his home. They're living as man and wife without the sanctity of marriage. This violates every principle our community was founded on. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. More than that, Vaughn continued. This woman claims to practice medicine, but she has no license, no verification of her training. For all we know, she's a charlatan, endangering lives. That's a lie, Martha shouted. Is it? Where's her medical license? Her credentials? Can she prove she attended any legitimate institution? Grace stepped forward. Her voice shook but held. I trained at Pennsylvania Hospital for Women under Dr. Catherine Morrison. I have letters of reference, certificates of completion, everything you're asking for. Convenient that you have them here. I always carry them, because men like you always ask. A few people in the crowd laughed. Vaughn's jaw tightened. And your reason for leaving Philadelphia? Why come west if you were so qualified? Grace felt the trap closing. Knew whatever she said would be twisted, used against her. I left because I reported a physician for misconduct, for performing unnecessary surgeries on vulnerable women. The medical establishment chose to protect him instead of his victims, so I came somewhere my skills were needed. Ah, so you're a troublemaker, someone who couldn't follow rules, Who thought she knew better than her superiors? I knew better than to let women die to protect a man's reputation. The crowd stirred. Uncertain now, Vaughn pressed his advantage. Noble words. But what I see is a woman running from consequences. A woman who seduced a grieving widower, who's using his loneliness to secure her own position. Ethan moved. Fast. Got between Vaughn and Grace. His voice was low. Lethal. Say one more word about her character, and we settle this a different way. Threatening me won't help your case, Cole. Ain't a threat. It's a promise. The mayor stepped in. Gentlemen, please. Let's keep this civil. Vaughn smoothed his jacket. Of course, I apologize for my bluntness, but the facts remain. An unmarried woman living with an unmarried man, practicing medicine without proper oversight. This isn't about morality. It's about protecting our community. From what? Dr. Abigail Hayes's voice cut through the square. She pushed through the crowd, climbed the platform despite her age, faced Vaughn directly. What exactly are you protecting us from, Silas? From a nurse who's saved more lives in 3 months than you've helped in 3 years. This doesn't concern you, Abigail. The hell it doesn't. I'm a licensed physician, have been for 32 years, and I've examined Grace Winters's work, her knowledge, her judgment. She's as qualified as any nurse I've worked with, more qualified than most. You're biased. Everyone knows you favor women in medicine. I favor competence in medicine, something you wouldn't recognize if it bit you. The crowd rippled with surprise. No one talked to Vaughn like that. Abigail turned to face the townspeople. I know what this is really about. Silas lost his wife 10 years ago. Childbirth. The midwife couldn't save her, and he's blamed every woman practicing medicine since. But his grief doesn't give him the right to destroy Grace Winters. Vaughn's face went white, then red. How dare you? I dare because it's true, and because I'm old enough and mean enough not to care what you think of me. She looked at the crowd. Grace Winters saved the Cooper boy's leg, the Murphy baby's life, old Anna Pritchard's pneumonia. How many of you have benefited from her care? Hands went up, slowly at first, then more, at least 20 people. And how many of you could afford Dr. Mitchell's fees? The hands stayed up. That's what we're really talking about here. Not morality, not protection, access. Grace gives people access to medical care they couldn't otherwise afford. And Silas can't stand it because it reminds him that money and power don't make you right, just rich. Vaughn's control cracked. This is absurd. You can't. I can, and I am. Abigail stepped down. Grace Winters has my full endorsement. Anyone who questions her qualifications can take it up with me. She walked through the crowd. People parted, made space. Martha climbed the platform next. My turn. I was a battlefield nurse at Shiloh, worked with dozens of physicians. Grace Winters is competent, compassionate. Exactly what this town needs. What Ethan Cole chooses to do in his own home is his business, not ours, not Silas's. Henry Cooper stood. I'm withdrawing $3,000 from Vaughn's bank, effective immediately. And I'll loan Ethan whatever he needs to keep his land. Anyone else want to join me? Hands went up across the square. Dozens of them. 700. 500. 200. But it's all I got. Vaughn watched his power crumbling. His face went hard, desperate. You're all fools. Letting sentiment cloud judgment. That woman is dangerous. She's the reason my baby's alive. Sarah Murphy stood, young, trembling, but standing. My daughter would have died. Grace sat with me 12 hours, never asked for payment, just held my hand and told me I was strong enough. Jessie limped forward. She saved my leg when Doc Hayes wanted to cut it off, and she taught me to read while I healed. Who does that? Who takes that kind of time with a nobody orphan? I'm nobody, another voice called. She treated me anyway. Me too. And me. One by one they stood. testified. Every person Grace had treated, every family she'd helped. The collective weight of their gratitude pushing back against Vaughn's accusations. Grace stood frozen, overwhelmed. These people, most of them strangers 3 months ago, standing up, speaking out. For her. Ethan's arm went around her waist, steadying. Vaughn played his last card. This is mob sentiment, not justice. I'm calling for a formal vote. Those in favor of Miss Winters leaving Silver Creek, raise your hands. Maybe a dozen hands went up, mostly merchants, people who depended on Vaughn's bank for credit. Those opposed, the rest of the square raised their hands, at least 50 people, maybe more. The mayor looked relieved. Well, I think that settles it. Miss Winters is welcome to stay. Vaughn's face went ugly. He looked at Grace, at Ethan. This isn't over. Yeah, Ethan said quiet. It is. Vaughn pushed through the crowd, disappeared toward the bank, beaten, but not broken. Men like him never were. The crowd surged forward, people congratulating Grace, shaking Ethan's hand, thanking them both. Grace felt dizzy, unreal, like she might wake up and find it was all a dream. Martha grabbed her shoulders. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. All of us. No, you gave us something to fight for. That's different. The crowd eventually dispersed, headed home, back to their lives. Grace and Ethan stood in the empty square, just the two of them and Martha and Henry and Jesse. Come to dinner, Martha said. Celebrate properly. Can't, Ethan said. Got someone coming by the cabin tonight. Something we need to take care of. He looked at Grace. She saw the question in his eyes, nodded. What are you planning? Martha asked, suspicious. You'll see soon enough. Back at the cabin, Reverend Green arrived at dusk. A quiet man, middle-aged, decent. He looked between Ethan and Grace. Martha said you wanted to see me, urgently. We want to get married, Ethan said. Tonight, no big ceremony, no fuss, just legal, just binding. Grace's heart hammered. They hadn't discussed this, not specifically, but she found herself nodding. Yes, that's what we want. Reverend Green smiled. About time. I was wondering when you two would make it official. You're not going to lecture us about propriety, Grace asked. My job is to bind people together in God's sight, not judge them. You love each other. Yes, they said together. Then that's all that matters. Let me get my book. The ceremony took 10 minutes. Simple vows, no rings, just words and promises and Reverend Green's blessing. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. What God has joined, let no man separate. Ethan kissed her. Not their first kiss. But somehow the most important. The one that made everything real, everything legal, everything permanent. After Reverend Green left, they stood in the cabin, husband and wife. The words felt foreign, wonderful, terrifying. We really did it, Grace whispered. Yeah, no taking it back now. Do you want to take it back? Ethan pulled her close. Not a chance. You're stuck with me, Grace Cole. Grace Cole. She tested the name, smiled. I like it. Me too. That night they made love as husband and wife. Different somehow from before. More significant. More permanent. Two people choosing each other. Binding themselves together against whatever came next. Later, lying tangled in blankets, Grace traced patterns on Ethan's chest. What happens now? Now we build. The clinic. Our life. Our future. Vaughn won't give up. He'll find another way to come at us. Let him try. He's lost the town's respect, lost their money. He's done. Grace wanted to believe it, but something in her gut said it wasn't over. Men like Vaughn didn't quit. They regrouped, adapted, came back meaner. But tonight, she chose not to worry. Tonight, she chose to be happy, to lie in her husband's arms and believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd won. Outside, the stars turned overhead. Inside, two people who'd found each other against impossible odds slept peacefully. For now, that was enough. For now, they'd survived. Together. And tomorrow, they'd start building something that would last. Morning came with Henry Cooper's wagon and 20 men behind it. Grace woke to the sound of hammers and saws. She sat up confused. Ethan was already dressed, standing at the window with a strange expression on his face. "What's happening?" "Come see." Outside, the valley had transformed into organized chaos. Men were unloading lumber from wagons, marking measurements. Henry stood in the middle directing traffic like a general commanding troops. Martha saw them emerge, walked over grinning. "Surprise. We're building your clinic, proper one. Addition to the cabin's east side. Exam rooms, waiting area, storage, everything you need." Grace's hand went to her mouth. "Martha, we can't afford." "Didn't ask you to. Henry's donating materials. These men are donating labor. Call it a wedding present. Call it gratitude. Call it whatever you want. But we're building it." Ethan's voice was rough. "Henry, this is too much." Henry looked up from his plans. "It ain't enough. Grace saved my nephew. Probably saved half the families here. Time we gave her proper space to work. Now stop jawing and grab a hammer. You're burning daylight." Grace couldn't speak, could barely breathe. These people, this community. 3 months ago she'd been a stranger, an outcast. Now they were building her a clinic. "Grace." Ethan touched her arm. "You all right?" She wiped her eyes. Yeah, I'm all right." Jesse appeared carrying boards twice his size, determined. "Miss Winters? Mrs. Cole, where do you want the examination table?" Mrs. Cole. The name still felt new, foreign. But hearing it from Jesse made something warm bloom in her chest. "East wall," she said. "Good light from that window." The boy nodded, hauled the boards away. Grace and Ethan joined the work. She couldn't swing a hammer worth a damn, but she could hold boards steady, could fetch water, could organize supplies as they arrived. By noon the frame stood, rough but solid, the bones of something real. Women arrived with food, set up tables under the cottonwood trees, fried chicken, fresh bread, apple preserves. A feast that appeared like magic. Sarah Murphy approached Grace shy. "Mrs. Cole, I made extra, for you and Mr. Cole, to take home, since you're newlyweds and all." Grace took the basket. "Thank you, Sarah. You didn't have to." "Wanted to. You gave me my daughter. Least I can do is feed you proper." The girl hurried away before Grace could respond. Ethan came up behind her, covered in sawdust and sweat. "Hungry. Starving. But Ethan, this is too much. They're giving us too much. They're giving what they can afford to give, what they want to give. Don't take that from them. I just don't know how to repay it. You already are, every time you treat someone. Every time you show up when they need help. That's the payment. That's the whole point." He was right. Grace knew he was right. But the weight of gratitude felt heavy, overwhelming, like she'd never be able to balance the scales. By sunset, the clinic walls stood complete, roof partially framed, windows installed. The interior still needed work, but the structure existed. Real and solid and permanent. The men packed up their tools, promised to return tomorrow, finish what they started. Henry clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "Good work today. Your pa would be proud." Ethan's throat worked. "Thank you for all of it." Or, "Thank Grace. She's the one who reminded us what community means." After everyone left, Ethan and Grace stood in the new clinic space. It smelled like fresh-cut lumber and possibility. "It's real," Grace whispered. "We have a real clinic." "We do." She turned to him. "What if I'm not good enough?" What if I fail these people after everything they've given us? Ethan took her face in his hands. You won't fail. You're not capable of it. You'll make mistakes, sure. Everyone does. But fail, no. That ain't in you. How do you know? Because I've watched you. Watched you fight for every patient. Watched you sit up all night with sick children. Watched you treat people others gave up on. That kind of dedication doesn't fail. It just keeps going. Grace kissed him. I love you. Love you too. Now let's eat. I'm starving and Sarah made enough food to feed an army. They ate on the cabin porch, watching the last light fade from the valley. The clinic stood dark against the evening sky. A promise, a future, a home for healing. 3 days later, the clinic opened officially. Simple ceremony. Reverend Green blessed the building. Martha hung a hand-carved sign above the door. Cole Family Clinic, all welcome. The name made Grace's breath catch. Cole Family Clinic. Not just hers, both of theirs. A partnership, a legacy. The first patient arrived within the hour. A man thrown from his horse, dislocated shoulder. Grace worked quick, set it with Ethan's help. The man left grateful, paid with 2 chickens and a promise to spread the word. More came after, a steady trickle that became a stream. Farmers who'd been waiting for a proper facility. Women who felt safer with Grace than with male doctors. Children who needed routine care. Grace worked from dawn until dark. Ethan managed the business side, kept records, tracked payments, maintained supplies. They developed rhythms, patterns, the comfortable efficiency of partners who trusted each other completely. One evening, 2 weeks after opening, Dr. Abigail Hayes arrived. She walked through the clinic slow, inspecting everything, her face unreadable. Finally, she nodded. You did good, better than good. This is exactly what Silver Creek needed. Thank you for everything. The books, the testimony, standing up for me. Abigail waved it off. Didn't do it for you. Did it because it was right. But I'm glad it worked out. She sat heavily in one of the waiting chairs, suddenly looking every one of her 65 years. You all right? Grace asked. Tired. Eyes are getting worse. Can't see fine detail anymore. Time I stopped pretending otherwise. Grace's heart sank. There's nothing. No, it's age. Nature. Can't fight either one forever. Abigail looked at her. Which is why I'm asking you to take my patients. The ones who'll come to a woman. Not many, but some. They'll need someone they can trust. I'd be honored, but Abigail, you're not retiring. I am. Should have done it years ago. But I was stubborn. Thought I had to keep fighting, keep proving myself. But Grace, that's the thing about fighting. Eventually you get tired, and that's okay. That's human. She stood, pressed something into Grace's hand. A medical bag. Old, well used. The leather worn soft. This was mine. Carried it for 30 years. Now it's yours. Don't waste it on ego or pride. Use it to help people. That's all that matters in the end. Grace's eyes filled. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just be better than I was. Make fewer mistakes. Help more people. That's legacy enough. Abigail left before Grace could respond. Walked out into the evening, shoulders straight despite everything. A warrior leaving the battlefield but not defeated, just finished. Ethan found Grace crying in the examination room, holding Abigail's bag like it was sacred. She's retiring, Grace managed, giving me her patience, her practice, everything she built. Ethan pulled her close. That's trust, real trust. She believes in you. What if I let her down? You won't. And if you do, you'll learn from it and do better next time. That's all anyone can ask. Grace buried her face in his chest, let herself feel the weight of it, the responsibility, the honor, the terrifying privilege of carrying someone else's legacy forward. Winter deepened. The clinic stayed busy. Grace saw patients. Ethan managed everything else. Their life fell into patterns that felt like permanence. One morning, Jessie arrived with news. Miss Winters, Mrs. Cole, there's 2 children at Martha's, orphans. Their aunt can't keep them. Martha's asking if you might have room. Grace looked at Ethan, saw her own thoughts reflected in his face. How old? Ethan asked. 7 and 5, sister and brother. Parents died of influenza last month. Grace's heart clenched. 7 and 5. The same ages her siblings had been when she left Philadelphia. The ones she'd failed to protect from her father's temper. We'll take them, she said. Ethan nodded. Yeah, we'll take them. Jessie's face lit up. Really, just like that. Just like that. Bring them by this afternoon. After Jessie left, Ethan took Grace's hand. You sure about this? 2 more mouths to feed. 2 more people depending on us. I'm sure. Are you? Yeah, house is too quiet anyway. And Grace after losing Caleb having kids around again. It feels right. The children arrived that afternoon. Lucy and Thomas. Lucy was tiny for 7. Dark hair, serious eyes that had seen too much. Thomas clung to his sister's hand. Wouldn't speak. Wouldn't look at anyone. Martha brought them inside. They've had a hard time. Lost everything. Lucy's trying to be brave, but Thomas hasn't talked since his parents died. Grace knelt down to Lucy's level. Hi, Lucy. I'm Grace. This is my husband, Ethan. Would you like to stay with us for a while? Lucy's chin trembled. You don't want us. Nobody wants us. Aunt Helen said we're too much trouble. Aunt Helen's wrong. We want you, both of you. Why, you don't even know us. Grace chose her words careful. Because everyone deserves a home, a place where they're safe and wanted. And we have room. We have space. We have love to give if you'll let us. Lucy looked at Thomas, at Martha, at Ethan standing quiet and steady behind Grace. Finally, she nodded. All right, for a while. For as long as you need. Martha left. The children stood uncertain in the middle of the cabin. Jessie had already moved his things to the barn to make room. Now Lucy and Thomas had the small bedroom, a space of their own. Grace showed them around. The clinic, the examination room, the kitchen where they'd eat meals. Thomas's eyes went wide at the medical equipment, but he still didn't speak. That night at dinner, Lucy ate like she was afraid the food might disappear. Thomas picked at his plate. Grace and Ethan didn't push, just let them be. After dinner, Grace suggested a story. Lucy agreed, reluctant. They gathered by the fire, Jessie included. One strange new family figuring out how to fit together. Grace read from one of Ethan's books. A simple tale about a lost dog finding home. Thomas fell asleep against his sister's shoulder. Lucy's eyes got heavy, but she fought it. You can sleep, Grace said gentle. You're safe here. That's what Mama said, before. Grace's throat tightened. I know, and I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen again. But I can promise we'll do everything we can to keep you safe, to give you a home. That's not nothing. Lucy studied her, then nodded. All right. Ethan carried Thomas to bed. Lucy followed. They tucked the children in, left a lamp burning low in case they woke scared. In their own bed later, Ethan held Grace close. Think we're doing the right thing. I don't know, but it's the thing that feels right. That has to count for something. You'll be a good mother to them. I don't know how to be a mother. I barely know how to be a wife. You'll learn. We both will. Together. Grace kissed him. Together. The weeks that followed were hard. Lucy tested boundaries constantly, broke rules, talked back, pushed to see if they'd give up on her. They didn't. Thomas still wouldn't speak, just followed Lucy everywhere, silent shadow. Grace worried, consulted Abigail, who said give him time. Some wounds needed space to heal. Jessie helped, patient with both younger children, teaching them small tasks, making them feel useful, valuable, part of something. One morning, Grace found Lucy in the clinic, looking at medical supplies with hungry curiosity. "Can I help?" Lucy asked. "With patience. I could fetch things, hold bandages, whatever you need." Grace saw the need behind the question, the desperate desire to be useful, to earn her keep. "You don't have to earn your place here, Lucy. You already have it." "But I want to help, please." Grace considered. "All right, you can assist, but only with things I tell you, and you have to listen exactly. Medicine isn't something to play with." Lucy nodded, serious. "I'll listen, I promise." She became Grace's shadow, learning, watching, asking endless questions, smart questions that showed a mind hungry for knowledge. Thomas warmed to Ethan, followed him around the property, helped with chores. Still didn't speak, but started communicating through gestures. Small signs of trust. Spring came slow, snow melted, mud replaced it. The valley turned green. Wildflowers bloomed where there'd been only white. Grace stood at the clinic window one morning watching Ethan and Thomas repair a fence. Jessie and Lucy were organizing supplies behind her. This strange patchwork family they'd created. "Mrs. Cole," Lucy's voice was uncertain. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are we staying, like, permanently? Or is this just temporary, until you find somewhere better to put us?" Grace turned, looked at this fierce, brave child, who'd lost everything and was terrified to hope for anything. "You're staying. Permanently. If you want to." "What about Thomas?" "He's difficult. He doesn't talk. What if—" "Thomas is perfect exactly as he is. You both are. You're family now. That's not temporary. That's forever." Lucy's face crumpled. She tried to hide it, but tears came anyway. Grace pulled her close. Let her cry. This child who'd been trying so hard to be strong. "I was scared," Lucy whispered. "Scared nobody would want us. That we'd end up in an orphanage or worse." "I know, but you're safe now. Both of you." "Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for letting us." That evening something shifted. Thomas spoke. Just one word at dinner. "More." Everyone froze. Ethan's hand stilled on his fork. Jessie's eyes went wide. Lucy gasped. Grace kept her voice calm. "More stew." Thomas nodded. "Please." "Of course." She served him another helping. Didn't make a big deal. Didn't draw attention. Just treated it like the normal thing it should be. But later, after the children were in bed, Ethan pulled Grace into his arms. He spoke. "He did?" "We did that. We gave him something safe enough to find his voice again." Grace leaned against him. "We're doing it, aren't we? Actually building something real." "Yeah, we are." Summer brought a visitor neither expected. A woman in her 40s, well-dressed, carrying an expensive leather case. She introduced herself as Elizabeth Worth, journalist from Harper's Weekly. "I'm writing a series on frontier medicine," she explained. "Someone in Denver mentioned your clinic, said you were doing remarkable work. I'd like to interview you, document what you're building here." Grace felt exposed, vulnerable. "I don't know if that's—" "It would help," Elizabeth said gently. "Other communities seeing what's possible. Other women considering medicine, seeing that it can be done. Your story matters." Ethan squeezed Grace's hand. "Your choice." Grace thought about Abigail, about the battles she'd fought alone, about how much easier it might have been with support, with visibility, with proof that women could succeed in medicine. "All right, ask your questions." Elizabeth spent 3 days in Silver Creek, interviewed patients, watched Grace work, talked to Martha and Henry and Jessie, and even shy Thomas, who spoke more now but still preferred silence. She drafted the article longhand, read it to Grace and Ethan on her last evening. "The Nurse of Silver Creek: How One Woman and a Rancher Changed the Frontier." It told their story. The train station, the scandal in Boston, the town meeting, the community's support. But more than that, it told the story of what they'd built: the clinic, the family, the model for what frontier medicine could be. Grace's eyes filled reading it. You made us sound heroic. I made you sound human, which you are. But Grace, what you're doing here, it is heroic. Maybe not in the way stories usually define it, but in the way that actually matters. You're helping people who have nowhere else to turn. That's the definition of heroism. After Elizabeth left, Grace kept the article, read it over and over, trying to see herself the way Elizabeth saw her, trying to believe she'd actually done something worth documenting. Fall arrived. Harvest season. The clinic stayed busy with injuries. Ethan worked beside Grace. Jesse had started studying medicine properly, serious about it. Lucy assisted whenever Grace allowed. Thomas had started school, was learning his letters. One evening, Grace stood on the porch, watching the sun set over the valley. Ethan found her there, wrapped his arms around her waist, thinking hard thoughts. Thinking about how different everything is. A year ago, I was freezing at that station, certain I was dying, certain my life was over. And now I have you. I have a family, a clinic, a purpose. Everything I thought I'd lost in Philadelphia, I found here. But better, more real. Ethan turned her to face him. You built this, Grace. You and your stubborn refusal to quit, to give up, to let other people define what you could be. We built it, together. Yeah, together. They stood holding each other while the stars began to appear. Inside the cabin, children laughed. Jesse was teaching Thomas some card game. Lucy was reading aloud. Normal sounds, family sounds. Grace thought about Abigail's words, about legacy, about being better than those who came before, about helping more people. She thought about Elizabeth's article, about other women reading it, other communities seeing what was possible. She thought about the patients she'd treated, the lives she'd saved, the small, quiet victories that added up to something larger. We did good, she said softly. We did, Ethan agreed. And for now, for this moment, that was enough. Winter returned, but gentler this time. The clinic had been open a full year. Grace kept count not in days but in patients. 347 people treated. 12 lives saved that would have been lost otherwise. Numbers that mattered more than any ledger. Jesse had turned 15, tall now, serious. He spent every free moment studying Abigail's medical texts. Grace caught him one morning practicing sutures on an old leather boot. You're getting good, she said. He looked up, pride and embarrassment warring on his face. Think I could be a real doctor someday? I think you already are. You just need the paper to prove it. But I'm nobody, an orphan. Who'd teach me proper? Grace sat beside him. Dr. Hayes started as nobody. I started as somebody's daughter who disappointed them. Ethan started as a soldier who came home broken. We're all nobody until we decide to be somebody. You've already decided. Now you just have to do the work. Jesse nodded slow, determination settling over his features. Then I'll do the work. Lucy had grown too. 10 now, sharp as a tack. She could diagnose common ailments better than some trained nurses. Grace had started teaching her formally, real medical instruction. The girl drank it up like water in drought. Thomas was 8, still quiet but no longer silent. He spoke when he had something worth saying, spent his time drawing, detailed sketches of plants and animals and people. Grace had caught him drawing her once, working over a patient. The likeness was startling. You're talented, she'd said. Thomas had shrugged. I see things different than other people. This is how I show it. Then keep showing it. The world needs different ways of seeing. Ethan had expanded the ranch, slowly, carefully, using money from the clinic to buy breeding stock, building what he'd lost. But different this time. Better. With Grace beside him every step. They'd established rhythms. Grace handled medical work. Ethan managed business and ranch. The children helped both. A family in the truest sense. Not blood, but choice. And choice ran deeper sometimes. One January morning, Martha arrived at dawn. Her face was gray, pinched with pain. "It's Henry," she said, voice shaking. "He collapsed last night. Won't wake up. Grace, please." They rode fast. Grace grabbed her medical bag. Ethan stayed with the children. Grace and Martha reached the Cooper house in 20 minutes. Henry lay in bed, breathing shallow, skin clammy, pulse weak and irregular. Grace examined him quick. Thorough, her hands steady even as her mind raced through possibilities. "How long has he been like this?" "Found him 6 hours ago. Thought he was sleeping heavy. Then I couldn't wake him." Grace checked his pupils, his reflexes, his heart rhythm. The signs pointed one direction: stroke, significant. Time was everything. "Martha, listen to me. This is serious. His brain is bleeding or a vessel's blocked. Either way, he needs more help than I can give here." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to get him to Denver, to a real hospital, fast." Martha's face crumpled. "It'll take 3 days by wagon. He won't survive that." Grace thought fast. The railroad. Silver Creek connected to the main line now. A train could reach Denver in 8 hours. "We'll take the train. Flag it down if we have to. Martha, I won't let him die without trying everything." They moved Henry to a wagon. Grace rode with him, monitoring his breathing, his pulse, talking to him even though he couldn't respond. "You stay with us, Henry. You hear me? Martha needs you. This valley needs you, so you stay." At the station, Grace sent word down the line: emergency medical transport required. The station master promised to stop the next train through. It came 2 hours later. The conductor balked at first, then saw Martha's face, saw Grace's determination, saw Henry dying. "Load him on. We'll make Denver by sundown." The ride was the longest 8 hours of Grace's life. She worked the entire time, kept Henry stable, monitored his vitals, administered what little she could to prevent further damage. Martha sat beside her husband, holding his hand, whispering memories. Their wedding, their children. 40 years together condensed into desperate words. "You don't get to leave me, Henry Cooper. We had a deal. Together till the end. This ain't the end. Not yet." Denver General Hospital took Henry immediately. A doctor named Richardson examined him, confirmed Grace's diagnosis: massive stroke, left hemisphere, touch and go whether he'd survive. "You did good work," Richardson told Grace. "Keeping him stable, getting him here fast. Most frontier nurses wouldn't have known what they were dealing with. I had good teachers. Still, he's got a fighting chance because of you." Henry survived the night, then the next. By the third day he woke. Couldn't move his right side. Couldn't speak clear, but alive, aware, present. Martha sobbed against Grace's shoulder. "Thank you. God, thank you." "Thank the doctors here. I just got him to them." "No, you saved him. You knew what to do. You didn't panic. You fought for him." Grace thought about that word, fought. She'd been fighting so long, for her career, for respect, for the right to help people. Sometimes fighting looked like testimony at medical boards. Sometimes it looked like 8 hours on a train keeping a man alive through sheer stubborn will. They stayed in Denver a week. Henry improved slowly. Richardson said he'd need months of recovery. Might never regain full function. But he'd live. He'd have time. On the train home, Martha took Grace's hand. "I owe you everything." "You owe me nothing. You stood up for me when the town wanted me gone. You built my clinic. You gave me a chance. This was just returning the favor." "It was more than that. And Grace, you should know, you're not just a nurse anymore. You're a doctor in everything but name. What you did for Henry, that was physician-level work." Grace looked out the window, at the frontier rolling past, at the vast possibility of it all. "Maybe someday I'll get that name, that formal recognition. But Martha, out here, I'm already doing the work that matters, the work that saves lives. The paper might come eventually, but the purpose is already here. Back in Silver Creek, word spread fast about Henry's rescue. About Grace's quick thinking. About the train ride and Denver hospital and the life saved. More patients came. Some from neighboring towns. People who'd heard about the nurse who knew things other frontier practitioners didn't. Who'd studied in Philadelphia. Who combined book learning with practical skill. The clinic expanded again. Ethan built a second examination room. A proper waiting area. Storage for increasing supplies. What had started as a small addition to their cabin had grown into something substantial. Something permanent. Spring brought Elizabeth Worth back. Her article had published. Been reprinted in newspapers across the West. She wanted to do a follow-up. Document the clinic's growth. "You've become famous," Elizabeth said. "At least in certain circles. Medical journals are citing your work. Other frontier clinics are using your model." Grace felt uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm just doing what needs doing." That's exactly why it matters. You're not doing this for recognition. You're doing it because people need help. That authenticity comes through, inspires others. Elizabeth interviewed patients again, documented Lucy's medical training, Jesse's ambitions, Thomas's artistic eye for anatomy, the family they'd built around healing. Her second article ran that summer. The Cole Legacy Building Frontier Medicine, One Patient at a Time. It talked about Grace's training, about Abigail passing the torch, about Ethan's support, about the children learning medicine and ranching both, about a model for frontier healthcare that actually worked. The article mentioned something else too, a proposal in the territorial legislature to license frontier nurses, give them legal standing, recognize their work officially. "They're using your clinic as the example," Elizabeth explained. "Proof that with proper training and community support, frontier medicine can meet standards. You're changing policy, Grace. Not just treating patients." Grace didn't know what to do with that information. Felt too big, too important, too far from the woman who'd nearly frozen at a train station 18 months ago. That night she told Ethan about it. They sat on the porch watching stars emerge. The clinic stood dark behind them, peaceful, complete. "You scared?" Ethan asked. "Terrified. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail and it hurts? Not just my patients, but all the women trying to come after me." "You won't fail. And Grace, even if you do sometimes, even if you make mistakes, that's human. That's real. Perfection ain't the goal. Progress is." "When did you get so wise?" "When I married a woman who makes me think harder about everything." She leaned against him. "I love you." "Love you too." Fall came with news that shocked everyone. Silas Vaughn was selling his holdings, the bank, the mercantile, everything, moving east, back to Philadelphia ironically, where Grace had fled from. Why? Grace asked Martha when she heard. Martha shrugged. Pride, maybe. He lost here, lost respect, lost power. Men like Vaughn can't abide losing, so they run somewhere they might win again. Should I feel bad for him? Do you? Grace considered. No, he tried to destroy us, tried to take everything. I'm glad he's gone. That's honest, at least. But the night before Vaughn left, he appeared at the clinic, late, after patients had gone. Grace was cleaning instruments. Ethan was in the barn with Thomas. She heard the knock, opened the door to find her enemy standing there. Mr. Vaughn. Her voice was cold, careful. Mrs. Cole, may I come in? She wanted to refuse, but curiosity won. Briefly. He entered, looked around. At the clinic she'd built, the equipment, the records, the evidence of everything he'd tried to prevent. You've done well, he said finally. No thanks to you. No, none at all. He paused. I came to apologize. Grace's hand tightened on the counter. Excuse me. I treated you abominably, tried to destroy you, used my grief as justification for cruelty. That was wrong. Yes, it was. My wife died because no one knew how to help her. The midwife was incompetent, drunk half the time, and I blamed all women in medicine for her failures. That was irrational, unfair to you and others. Grace waited. Let him speak. I see now what you're building here. It's good work, important work, the kind of work that might have saved my wife if someone like you had been available. He looked at her. I won't ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know. I was wrong. You were right. And I'm sorry I made your life harder. He turned to leave. Grace's voice stopped him. Mr. Vaughn. Yes, I do forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying hatred is exhausting, and I don't have energy to spare for it. Something like relief crossed his face. Thank you. I hope Philadelphia treats you better than it treated me. I hope Silver Creek treats you better than I did. He left. Grace stood alone in the clinic, feeling strange, untethered. She'd expected to hate Vaughn forever, but forgiveness felt better, lighter, like setting down a weight she'd been carrying. Ethan found her standing there. You all right? Vaughn came by, apologized. What did you say? I forgave him. Ethan pulled her close. That took courage. Or exhaustion. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Either way, I'm proud of you. Winter came again. The second one since Grace arrived. But this winter felt different. Warmer somehow, despite the cold. The clinic stayed busy. Henry recovered enough to visit occasionally. Offer advice, tell stories. Abigail passed peacefully in her sleep that January. 70 years old, tired, ready. She left everything to Grace. Her house, her remaining medical equipment, her journals documenting 30 years of frontier medicine. At the funeral half, the valley attended. People whose lives she'd touched, whose children she'd delivered, whose ailments she'd treated when no one else would. Reverend Green spoke about legacy, about how some people's influence echoes beyond their lifetime, how Abigail's work lived on through Grace, through Jessie, through every frontier nurse who came after. Grace stood at the graveside, held Ethan's hand, thought about teachers and students, about passing knowledge forward, about the responsibility of carrying someone else's torch. Thank you, she whispered to the cold ground, for everything. Spring brought the territorial legislature's decision. Frontier nurses with proper training and community endorsement could be licensed. Official recognition, legal standing, protection. Grace received her license in April. A simple paper, but it meant everything. Validation, proof she belonged, that her work mattered in ways the system recognized. Lucy was first to congratulate her. Does this mean I can be licensed someday too? If you keep studying, keep learning, keep caring about doing it right. I will, I promise. Jesse had left for medical school in Denver, a scholarship Grace helped him secure. He wrote weekly. Detailed letters about anatomy classes, clinical rotations, the challenges of being a poor frontier kid among wealthy city students. Grace wrote back, encouraged him, reminded him why he'd started. That poor frontier kids needed doctors who understood them, who'd been them. Thomas had started apprenticing with a photographer in town, combining his drawing skills with the new technology, creating images that captured frontier life in ways words couldn't. The family had changed, grown, evolved, but the core remained. Grace and Ethan, building something together, something that mattered. One evening they sat on the porch, 5 years after Grace had arrived, frozen and half dead at that train station. The clinic stood solid behind them. The ranch stretched green before them. Children's laughter echoed from inside. "You ever think about that night?" Grace asked. "At the station?" "Sometimes. Wonder what would have happened if I'd left you there. If I'd made the easy choice instead of the right one." "You wouldn't have. That's not who you are." "Maybe. But Grace, I'm grateful I didn't. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and this whole strange family we built. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Easy things don't mean much. But this, what we built, this cost us. Cost us fear and doubt and nearly everything we had. That's what makes it valuable." Grace leaned against him. "We did good, didn't we? We did better than good. We did something that lasts." The stars emerged overhead, one by one, constant, reliable, witness to everything below. Inside the clinic, Lucy organized supplies for tomorrow's patients. Thomas sketched by lamplight. Ethan's ranch hands settled horses for the night. Normal sounds, life sounds, the sounds of something built to endure. Grace thought about Pemberton, about the board that destroyed her, about running west because there was nowhere else. She'd thought her life was over, her purpose lost, her future empty. But she'd been wrong. Her life hadn't ended. It had transformed into something better, more real, more meaningful than anything she'd left behind. "Redemption isn't granted," she said softly. "It's built." "What's that?" "Something I'm learning. You don't get redeemed by asking forgiveness or hiding from mistakes. You get redeemed by building something better, something that helps people, something that lasts beyond you." Ethan kissed her temple. "Sounds about right." They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been broken, finding that broken pieces could create something stronger than what they'd lost. The clinic would stand for another 100 years, eventually become a museum, a testament to frontier medicine, to one woman's determination, to a community that chose to support rather than destroy. But that night, none of that mattered. What mattered was this moment, this family, this life they'd chosen together. Grace Cole looked out at the valley she'd made home, felt her husband's arm around her shoulders, heard children laughing inside. New patients would arrive tomorrow needing help she could give. This was legacy, not fame or recognition, but lives touched, people helped. A community changed for the better. Ethan had been right that first night. Dying alone wasn't right for nobody, but living alone wasn't much better. Building something with someone. Creating family where there was none. Choosing to heal instead of hurt. That was what made life worth surviving. "Thank you," Grace whispered. "For what?" "For finding me. For not leaving me in the snow. For giving me a reason to keep fighting." "Thank you for being worth finding." They held each other while the night deepened around them. Two people who'd started as strangers. Became partners. Became family. Became legacy. The story that started with a frozen woman at a train station ended with a thriving clinic. With children learning medicine. With a community that valued healing over judgment. With two people who'd chosen each other every single day. That was the real miracle. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but daily choice, daily commitment, daily love building something that outlasted the people who built it. Grace and Ethan Cole didn't just survive that winter. They showed the frontier what was possible when broken people refused to stay broken, when the judged refused to accept judgment, when the poor chose to give anyway. Their love story made history not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And real things built with purpose and maintained with care last forever.